Welcome to NPC, Next Portable Console, a Mac Stories podcast all about the games we take with us. I'm John Voorhees, and with me are Brendon Bigley. Hey, Brendon.
Hey, welcome back.
It's good to talk to you. And Federico Viticci. How you doing?
Hey, guys. Hello. I'm good. Hi.
It feels like it's been a very long time since we last talked. We have so much more to talk about today. I don't know. Where do you want to start today? I was thinking we'd do some news, you know?
Yes, I have a quick thing to say first, which is this is the first real episode that we are recording after launching the show publicly. We had pre-recorded both episodes in advance, and I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who listened, signed up, and had nice words and things to say about the show. I hope you're liking the show. We have a lot of things we want to talk about, and I'm just so happy to be doing this show with Brendon and John.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to go out and, rate the show, tell a friend about it, whatever, because that does actually help people find it. It's brand new show, so it's got a great core audience to get started. But yeah, the more people listen, the better. So check it out and share it with some friends.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody who's been reaching out and stuff. It's been very, very cool. Just really nice all around. We hit the top 5 on Apple Podcasts the week we launched, which was pretty remarkable. I don't think any of us expected that. Yeah.
No.
So thank you so much, for real.
Yeah. That being said, we have some handheld news recap we wanted to go over. And I think, Brendon, you're bringing the first one to the show today.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things that have hit the news in terms of new handhelds that I think we've just been kind of like sitting and waiting with bated breath to talk about on the show. And the one that I am definitely, I think, the most excited about is the Ayn Odin2 Mini, which was announced a couple weeks ago at this point. And at the time of this recording, at least, has hit reviewers. So reviewers have gotten hands-on with early production models, not actually finished units, which I think is important. If you're watching a lot of those reviews, I think a lot of those reviews are great, but it's worth noting that the plastic is not like the finalized plastic that they're using. But the Ayn Odin2 Mini is notable because it is pretty much exactly the same as the Odin 2, the one that John and I both own and love so dearly. But in the exact same form factor as the PlayStation Vita is like made for us.
Right. We're all Vita people, as the title of the first episode said. Yes. And so it's very exciting to see this. As you said, Brendon, it really is identical in terms of specs with the Odin 2, except for obviously smaller battery because it's a much thinner device.
Yeah. So it's 5,000 milliamp hours versus 8,000 milliamp hours. And I'll say for my piece, the Odin 2, I have the Odin 2 Pro. That thing lasts forever.
It really does.
On a charge. It is remarkable. And I've been playing mostly GameCube stuff on it recently because for the other show I do, Into the Aether, a low-key video game podcast, we're prepping for a big console retrospective of the entire GameCube library. So I've been playing a lot of that on the Odin 2. And it's remarkable how I can like get home from work, sit down on the couch, and then just play GameCube games literally until I go to sleep and not need to charge that thing.
Yeah.
So they're really making those 8,000 milliamp hours work. And I don't even know if I need it, is really kind of where I've landed on it. Like maybe 5,000 is fine. The other side of this that's worth mentioning is that it has a mini LED screen, which is much, much, much brighter, but also comes with, I think, the kind of classic problems that mini LED has, which is there's some vignetting around the display, and there's some blooming in the highlights. And that's going to rub people the wrong way in some cases, and in other cases, I think they'll think it looks really cool. Like, honestly, I think it looks rad. I actually usually go into RetroArch and add vignetting and bloom myself on displays that don't have it. So I'm like, cool, it's built in. I don't need to do anything. So all of this having been said, the question I think for a lot of people who either own the Ayn Odin 2 or were thinking about getting one is like, do I upgrade to the Mini or do I get the Mini instead of the Odin 2? And I think that's kind of like the big question on everybody's minds. If you have an Odin 2 already, you probably don't need to upgrade unless you really want it to be more pocketable. And on the flip side, if you don't have an Odin 2 already, I think the bigger question is, and this is worth mentioning, the Mini is more expensive than the regular one by like $50 to $100, depending on which SKU you're getting. So the question is like, is it worth it to you to have it be smaller? The answer for me is yes. I did order one already.
Oh, did you?
I did. God. Yeah, I really couldn't not. The idea of somebody just making a PlayStation Vita again, but it runs everything up through Switch is like a miracle to me. And also just the idea of having an Odin 2 that is actually portable. Because right now, the Odin 2, I love it to death. And we've talked about it a lot. John, you and I recorded a podcast about it for Wavelengths. Like, we've talked about it a lot. It is a remarkable device. It is, in my eyes at least, the best of the dedicated retro handhelds that exist at the moment. But shrinking that down into something that I can actually put in my pocket instead of like needing to put in a case and like gingerly put in my backpack while I'm traveling is just like something I really can't pass up on. So yeah, I ordered one. It should be coming in a couple weeks, hypothetically. I'm going to LA for a while, and then when I get back, it should be in my inbox, which I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's great. I'm right there with you on the battery. I don't feel like shrinking the battery is that big a deal. If I were, and I did look at this and think about ordering one myself. I actually decided not to for a couple of reasons. One is, I guess the main reason is ergonomics more than anything else. I was a little concerned about how this would feel compared to the Odin 2, which I really love the Odin 2 Pro. It's just very comfortable to use. But as you said, it's not the kind of thing you throw in your pocket and walk out the door with. You really do I always feel like I want to have some kind of case, like a Switch case or something like that, to throw it in. And then all of a sudden you've got an even bigger thing cramming up your bag or whatever it happens to be. But the mini LED is also especially the brightness is very tempting too, because this is the kind of display that I think would work really well if you're in kind of a sunshiny type of environment. Although I would really love one that was actually OLED. I think OLED would be pretty cool for this. But that would make
I feel like we're so close. We're so close to an OLED one of these. I
know.
Maybe the Odin 3, maybe Anbernic will figure it out. I feel like one of these companies within the next like 6 to 8 months is going to have an OLED display and people are going to go wild for it.
Yep.
I'm excited about that.
So let me ask you about these Android handhelds, because at the moment, like so far, I still don't have one. And we're going to talk about another Android device in a few minutes. But let me ask you, do these support sleep and resume like Switch-like or Steam Deck-like?
Yes, they do. And they're great. That's, we'll talk about the SP again later, but that's kind of one of the bigger differences, at least in my eyes, between both the Linux-based ones like Anbernic's devices for the most part, and stuff like the Ayn Odin2. Sleep and resume is great because it's basically just a phone. Like it is just using the same sleep and resume functions that an Android phone would have.
So you can,
for that reason, it's pretty good.
So you can emulate a GameCube game and then you put it to sleep like you never could when you were playing GameCube back in the day, and it just works because it's like a phone.
Yeah, I generally will take some precautions. Like I'll go in and like create a save state and just like make sure that everything is good to go before I go into sleep mode. But yeah, it really is that easy. And from my experience, at least, it's been pretty seamless.
Yeah, it's a lot like it's a lot, Federico, like using your iPhone to play retro games, except that it's all built into one unit. So it feels a lot more like a traditional handheld, and it's a lot more comfortable to hold just because of the way it's designed.
Got it. I want to talk about a couple of Windows handhelds in this segment. The first one is the ONEXPLAYER X1 Mini. Now, this is the second version of the X1. ONEXPLAYER, they've been making a bunch of devices for and also eGPUs for the past few years. They did the One X with an Intel system on a chip a few months back, and it was pretty widely criticized because of the performance issues with those Intel architectures. Now, the X1 is an interesting form factor because it's like basically the Legion Go, but taken to the extreme. So this is a tablet basically with a built-in kickstand with detachable controllers, just like a Legion Go, that you can also pair with a controller accessory to kind of turn it into a regular controller that you can hold like the two halves in your hands. It has multiple USB 4 ports. Like it takes the idea of a Legion Go to the extreme. This X1 Mini is interesting because it's smaller than the previous version. The previous version was an 11-inch device. This is an 8.8-inch display. pretty much exactly like a Legion Go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It has an AMD system on a chip instead of Intel. So this is running the 8840U, which is basically a step, a small step above the Z1 Extreme that the ROG Ally and the Legion Go have. 8.8 inch screen, 2 USB 4 ports, and an Oculink port. So you do get that extra performance for eGPUs, including the One X GPU made by the same company. It has a built-in kickstand and a 65 watt-hour battery, which is...
I'm sorry. So the X1 is the device and the One X is the eGPU?
The company is called One
X. Yeah.
A lot of X's flying around.
It's extreme. Come on. What do you want?
They all stand for extreme. Every single one of them stands for extreme.
I think so.
Yes.
So it's the ONEXPLAYER X1 Mini is this version. And also the same company makes the One X GPU. It's a lot of X's all over the place. It's on Indiegogo right now. And initially, in a spur of the moment kind of thing, I backed it. And then a few hours later, I changed my mind and I canceled my pledge. Mostly because I'm perfectly fine with the Legion Go.
Mhm.
I am intrigued by this very small performance improvement of the 808040U. But mostly the built-in Oculink port I think is interesting. But all things considered, given the price, you're still spending like $800 or something, depending on the configuration for this device. I thought, I'm okay with the Legion Go. I don't need this handheld right now, but I'm going to keep an eye on it. And I think it's very interesting.
That controller reminds me a lot of some of the Switch controllers that Cracked makes. You know the company I'm talking about that makes those big, chunky, a little bit like the Hori controllers. It reminds me of that a lot.
Split pad, it kind of likes the Split Pad Pro that Hori makes for
right,
the
exactly,
Switch.
with the little thing in the middle that you use to connect them together if you want to use it as a standalone controller.
Yeah, so this is an interesting alternative to the Legion Go, I think, especially if you're looking for that sort of performance, USB 4, Oculink, and detachable controllers. Also in Windows land, and this was like the big news item a couple of weeks ago, the ROG Ally X is, of course, now official. Pre-orders are open, and you can get your pre-order and you will get the console in July. Now, we haven't spoken about this on the show yet, but the Ally X, which is not... ASUS is not calling it an ROG Ally 2, but it kind of feels like it is in some ways. So it comes with a more ergonomic design. The device is slightly more rounded, especially in the back, which should make for a nicer, more comfortable grip. The internals have been redesigned in a couple of key areas. First of all, the console should be more approachable to modders than before, because ASUS saw how many people modded the ROG Ally to swap the buttons, to maybe put in Hall effect joysticks. And so they worked already with companies like GuliKit, I believe, to make sure that the Ally X can be even easier than the Ally to be modified if you want.
I think it's easier to take out the SSD too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I think they did that.
And it's also... And it's a different type of SSD, which is, finding an SSD upgrade for the original Ally was the format they were using. What was it called? The 2230, I think but it basically was the uncommon version of a compact SSD. I had to get mine from eBay, and it took ages to arrive.
Oh, really?
So they're switching to the more common, like the bigger type of flash storage these days, which is nice. I believe that 2280, something like that. So yeah, it's easier to mod. Obviously, ASUS never never sort of admitted the SD card flaws of the original ROG Ally.
They were cooking. Weren't they essentially cooking?
They were frying. They were frying.
Oh, really?
Oh,
I didn't even hear about that.
They moved it to the other side of the device because where it was right near a very hot part of the device and was cooking the micro SD cards, right?
Yeah, so many people had their SD card die, and I believe if you want, there's like a secret ASUS webpage where you can RMA the console and like get some kind of refund.
Secret.
But Asus never publicly said, look, we screwed up. We are recalling this computer because of the SD card flaw. So they just silently changed the placement of the SD card slot in the Ally X. And
it's like Nintendo with Joy-Con drift, which I assume when the Switch 2 eventually gets announced, they'll be like, and we've made incredible improvements to the Joy-Cons.
Boy, I hope so.
Longevity. Yeah.
Literally, it seems the same approach. And obviously, I think there are two other changes in terms of hardware that made headlines. The first one is the big chunky battery that this thing has, despite not really being heavier than before. The Ally X has an 80 watt-hour battery.
That's crazy.
This is a big battery, and I'm really keen to see more info on battery life as more reviewers get their hands on final units, because this is quite a jump compared to we just spoke about the ONEXPLAYER X1 Mini that has a 65 watt-hour battery, which is a pretty big one, but 80 seems like a considerable step above. So that'll be interesting. And of course, ASUS has just completely abandoned their proprietary XG Mobile eGPU connector in favor of USB 4. So the Ally X now has two. I think it's one USB 4 and one USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 port. But yeah, they are also embracing USB 4 ports for eGPU connections and other type of high bandwidth accessories, of course.
Yeah, I feel like we should have seen that coming, because when they introduced their NUCs at CES, it didn't have support for the XG Mobile, right?
Yeah. It's only at this point the XG Mobile is only living on for original Ally owners and for
some of the laptops.
For the couple of laptops that still support, but I do think that at this point ASUS may just be better off just discontinuing the XG Mobile. I was hoping they would make an adapter to go from XG Mobile to USB 4 with minimal bandwidth loss. They just didn't bother. So I do think that the XG Mobile connector is on its way out.
Interesting. Yeah. I've heard some stuff about ASUS and their like not so great customer service.
Same.
Response time recently, which I think has a lot of people kind of on the back foot in terms of if they want to be buying the Ally X or not. But honestly, the thing that's most remarkable to me is that we're already at the like mid-generation refresh stage of these first generation handheld PCs.
Yeah.
Like the ROG Ally X coming out, the Steam Deck OLED. There are rumors that Lenovo is working on a Legion Go Mini right now that they're going to be announcing sometime soon, hypothetically. I am excited about that prospect, and I'm glad that they're already iterating on the issues that everybody had with the generation 1 of all of these devices. But I am so excited about whatever generation 2 of the ROG Ally is, and the Legion Go and the Steam Deck. Like that's really appealing to me. And we'll talk a little bit more about Windows handhelds later, but the Ally X is a thing that I tentatively have my eye on, but I really need to see a lot of reviews and a lot of like long-term reviews specifically before I can buy into it.
Yeah, I'm also looking forward to the day when these things are a little less chunky than they are. I mean, these are really big handhelds, and they can be comfortable, but they're also still not the kind of thing. They're nothing like the retro handhelds we were just talking about. These aren't things that you have to kind of like pack them up and prepare to go with these, because they're just big, they're heavy, and they take up a lot of space.
Interestingly, with the Odin 1, I remember people got Windows running on that thing. And,
really?
And from what I understand, there are some people in the community who are trying to get Windows to run on the Odin 2 right now, which would hypothetically also work for the Mini. So there's a world in which you could get like a pretty low power Windows device in the shape of a PlayStation Vita sometime soon, if that community team follows through on that idea.
The last new handheld I want to bring to the show today is the upcoming, it's shipping right now and some early reviews are out, the Anbernic RG Cube. Now, this is a weird device in that it seems to be Anbernic's response to the Powkiddy RGB30, which we're gonna talk about on the show today. It's and it's been sort of a little bit ridiculed on Reddit over the past few weeks as some early photos started coming out because of some people were saying it's got a Fisher Price look to it.
It kind of
It's
does.
got some. It does. It's got some interesting hardware choices. So before we get to those, so this is a square display device. It's a 4-inch 720 by 720 IPS display. It's a 1:1 square aspect ratio. It runs Android 13, and it's pretty much the idea of this device, I guess, would be, what if we take the RGB30 and made a version that has some different opinions about D-pad placement and joystick placement, and tried to fix or at least improve upon the ergonomics of the RGB30. So a more rounded design, instead of having inline shoulder buttons, separate, between the shoulder buttons and the analog triggers, using the same square display panel, and just make the thing more comfortable and running Android instead of a fork of Linux that the RGB30 has. Now, early reviews are out. And as we'll talk about later in the show, I have some first impressions about the RGB30. I am very much looking forward to this. My Cube is on its way to Rome. It's currently past Italian customs in Milan, making its way to central Italy as we speak. I'm very keen to play around with this because I realized, and the reason I decided to try the RGB30 is I wanted to have the best possible machine for Super Nintendo emulation and some Game Boy emulation. There are some Game Boy Color games that I want to revisit. I've been dying to replay Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons on the Game Boy Color.
I forgot to tell you, I started playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles based on your story from our first episode.
Oh, nice.
What a great game that is.
The game is so good. The game is so
yeah.
good. So yeah, I was looking for some Super Nintendo emulation, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but I'm looking forward to the Cube because it should be slightly more powerful than the RGB30. I saw some early reviews mentioning like you can run GameCube games at 2x resolution with absolutely no problem. Some Wii games even, PlayStation 2. Anything that plays well on a square aspect ratio. You can play PlayStation 1 at 3x resolution. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I will bring some first impressions to the show as soon as I get mine.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, it's an interesting device. I think it's kind of perfect for what you're looking to use it for. I look at it having already, since I already have an Android device with the Ayn Odin, and I look at things like the Wi-Fi 5 and the square screen and think, well, those two things are very limiting to me because with the Ayn Odin, I can stream games very easily from my PS5 or Xbox or whatever, or over the internet because it's got Wi-Fi 7, and it's really smooth doing those things compared to having used Bluetooth or Wi-Fi 5 devices in the past. So it looks like a great single-purpose device, especially for anything that has like a square aspect ratio. I guess it would be great for, but I'm kind of not too tempted by it myself.
If anything else, I mean, if nothing else, just the naming convention, I think, is at least a huge improvement from the RG35XXSP and 28XX and et cetera, et cetera. I'm just glad they called it something normal. The RG Cube, honestly, is like great branding for this thing with its 1x1 display. Yeah, I'm interested in it. I'm excited to hear how you feel about it, specifically from the perspective of somebody who hasn't dipped into an Android version of one of these things yet. I think you're going to be kind of excited about it. My biggest recommendation for people who have not gotten into this scene at all and don't have any of these devices is sometimes Android is maybe the easier way to go to start, just because it's so much easier to wrap your head around than needing to like flash custom firmware to an SD card that is, Linux based and like learn that specific firmware in and out. Android's just a phone, baby. You know how to work one of those things.
Yeah, Android's not that hard, really. I mean, come on. You know, before we get to our topics, the rest of our topics, I do want to mention from the Nintendo Direct this Nintendo Switch Lite Zelda edition, because I saw this thing and I just wanted it right away.
Yeah. part of me. Okay, so it's this was in conjunction with The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which is just looks incredible. It's a top-down kind of classic Zelda game where you're playing as Zelda. And they're launching this Switch Lite alongside it. It's, kind of like a halfway point between bronze and gold. It's got the Triforce all over it. It looks so good. And there's a part of me that's like, do I buy this in the event that 5 years from now, somebody gets really good at hacking the Nintendo Switch to just like run Android, for example?
Right.
Wait, no, you can do it. I mean, I believe, but it involves soldering. That's the only issue. I believe
that's my big issue right now.
You can install a mod chip on a Switch Lite and put Android on it. Yeah, but you gotta be familiar with soldering. Unfortunately,
I don't have a Switch Lite, so that makes it even more tempting to me. Just as kind of an end of life of this console as a way to consolidate my games that I have from this generation of the Switch and take them with me going forward. It would be a nice way to do it. It's not, obviously the OLED screen, but it's more portable, and I kind of am tempted by it.
If you like the Odin 2, you will love the Switch Lite. My partner had a Switch Lite right when the pandemic started. It was the only Switch that we could find because they were just selling out left and right when Animal Crossing came out. So that was when we had a Switch Lite in the house, and every time I held it, I was so envious of hers. And I've always thought about getting one for myself.
I don't think I ever held one, even.
One of my kids has one. Yeah, they are great.
We'll see. I
just look, 3 guys trying to not buy another Switch when they already own one.
I already own 2 guys. I already have the original one plus the OLED still.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have some things we want to talk about, but first, I think John, you wanted to share your thoughts about the Brendon. What's the official name?
Oh yeah, it's the Anbernic RG35XXSP. Both of those X's stand for extreme.
They do. Extra extreme, I think, is actually the nomenclature. Yeah, I was very sad last time we recorded an episode because I didn't have mine yet. Mine took a little bit longer. It seemed to have gotten held up a little bit in New York and New Jersey, for which I blame Brendon specifically.
Yeah, that was my fault. I'm sorry.
I figured you were out there, slowing down the mail delivery, but it did show up 3 or 4 days before I went to WWDC, and I got to say, this, first of all, I love it. Second of all, it's perfect for traveling because I took it with me to WWDC, and I brought a lot of equipment for recording podcasts, working while I was there. I didn't have a lot of spare room in my bag, and that made this the perfect device for that. I mean, it's even smaller than like one of the iPhone controllers that I also brought with me. So it really did not add a significant amount of weight or crowding in my bag when I took it. And it's perfect for things, like being on a plane where you don't have a lot of space either, just sitting there and playing a bunch of games. And, I was very busy at WWDC and didn't spend a lot of time using it there, but I did use it kind of going to and coming from. And since then, I've been playing some games, and it's perfect. I mean, it just feels so good in your hands. I've been playing some Sonic 2 from the Game Gear. I've been playing Minish Cap, and I played a little F-Zero because I wanted to get a feel for kind of how it felt with Game Gear, SNES, and also Game Boy games. And it was great for all of those things. And I have not yet changed the operating system. I have that on my list of things to do, primarily because I haven't done it just because I've been catching up from traveling. But now that I've read Brendon's review of it, which we can talk a little bit about, I'm going to go for it this weekend, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I've been using the SP pretty much every day since we recorded that episode. I brought it with me also on a trip. I went to Boston for a little bit, which by train, so I just played the thing the entire way there.
Oh, nice.
And on the subway to and from work every day. And first of all, just fun thing about using this in New York City, specifically Manhattan, is people will stop and ask you if it's a Game Boy Advance a lot, way more than I was expecting,
really?
Which is kind of fun. Yeah, I've never had a device where people just come up and ask me about it more than this one. I will also say that since we recorded the last episode, I opened it up and did that button mod that everybody's been talking about, where you just put masking tape inside of it and it makes the buttons quieter, and it really does help a whole bunch.
Huh.
I would recommend that if you're a person who finds the buttons annoying over time. But yeah, I'm excited to see what you land on custom firmware wise, because I'm really all in on MuOS at this point. I've tried pretty much everything. The only one I haven't tried is Garlic OS because it's so early. Garlic OS, for those of you who don't know, is like almost the Anbernic version of Onion OS on the MIUI Mini. It's like there's a development team, or I think it might even just be one person who's working on just kind of making the Onion OS experience, but for Anbernic devices. So there is a build of Garlic OS available for the SP right now, but it's a little bit underbaked at the moment. It'll get there, but right now I wouldn't really recommend it. But MuOS feels so mature already, and I think a quick addendum to this, which I was planning on maybe talking about more in the next episode of this show, but I also picked up the RG28XX, which is Anbernic's newest kind of like mini handheld, like micro handheld. It's horizontal and looks a little bit like a Game Boy Advance Micro.
Oh, okay.
It has the same processor and internals as the SP, so same exact like system of or a collection of systems that you can play on this thing. The buttons are obviously really tiny. The screen is bizarre because it is apparently an old BlackBerry screen that they just turned horizontly to make it fit.
It's OLED too, isn't it? It's an old.
I don't think it's OLED, but it.
I'm thinking of something else.
It definitely is very pretty, but there are some weird issues because it's just a screen turned horizontally. Like shaders and stuff in RetroArch don't look correct because they're all turned the wrong way.
Oh, I bet.
But I've been using both of these simultaneously, but more specifically, the reason I'm bringing it up is because it is running the same chipset as the SP and the 35XXH, and the entire line of 35XX devices. MuOS just runs on this also. So I've switched now to a 2-card setup. So I have an SD card in each of these devices with MuOS installed with all of my settings and stuff. And then I have a second SD card that I swap between devices that has all of my games and saves on it.
That's smart.
And man, that is the dream. Like I love the SP. I've been bringing it with me a lot, but there are some days where I just like, I'm either wearing pants that are like a little bit tighter than my usual, like kind of bigger flowy pants or whatever. And it's just nicer to have a much smaller device, especially considering I'm pretty much only playing Game Boy and like Pokemon on here. So I've been taking the 28XX with me every once in a while, and it feels so much like Steve Jobs with the iPod Nano, like pulling it out of the little pocket inside your bigger pocket. It's just like miraculous that I forget that this thing is in my pocket all the time. But the back and forth between these two devices is interesting. I don't think I'll just caveat this with, I don't think I would recommend the 28XX as people's only device. I think if you need like one device in this price point, the 35XSP is like definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting to me that
it just feels like the one.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that BlackBerry seems to be right in the center of some of this retro handheld space.
Yeah.
Because the thing I was actually thinking about wasn't your device, Brendon. It's that there is a mod for the Game Boy Color that is using old OLED BlackBerry screens, right?
Yes. We saw this a few weeks ago. That is based on a BlackBerry OLED panel. that is a wild story. We'll find the YouTube link. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It looked
pretty cool.
Incredible. Yeah.
So the thing I did was I got the transparent blue one because it matches my Odin. And I've been experimenting with putting in, so I put the little, the Next Portable Console logo right under the lid, because you can take off the lid, you can unscrew it and detach it from the screen and slide in artwork there. So I've just been doing it as kind of a proof of concept so far, but I don't know. It's kind of a nice way to customize and personalize the device, which I like a lot.
I love that. Yeah. I should also mention that Sakura retro modding on Etsy. It's a pretty popular Etsy shop for people who like to customize and mod their consoles. Just started releasing stuff for the SP.
Oh, really?
I just bought some new buttons and a front lid sticker that is all reminiscent of materia from Final Fantasy VII, which honestly is not even a game I plan on playing on here, but it just looked so pretty and was made specifically for the silver SP that I was like, I gotta do it. I have to try it.
Oh my god!
Especially now that I'm a little more comfortable opening the thing up.
Yeah.
Having done the button mod, I'm like, cool. Let me switch the buttons out and see how that feels.
They have an SNES sticker mod. I'm just looking.
They do?
On the Etsy
Okay.
page. Yes,
Oh, wow.
they do. Oh.
That's
I
pretty
think they
cool.
sold out of one already. They had a couple when I checked the other day, but they sold out pretty quickly.
You know, before we move on, you guys, I think we should mention that Brendon went to a bar and someone pulled out their Game Boy SP to compare with.
Yes.
I was blown away by this. Tell this story, Brendon.
Yeah, I went with my partner to a bar to go meet up with some friends. A friend sold her book recently, so we were like, "Oh, we'll take you out for drinks, and we'll celebrate. Your book getting picked up." And one of our mutual friends showed up, and she pulled out her SP, original SP,
Oh my
with
god.
Pokemon Silver, like
Nice.
on the title screen, which was the game that I was also playing on the subway ride over to the bar.
Oh, wow.
So we just put them both. Next to each other. I took a bunch of pictures. I have the picture in the review that I put up on Wavelength, so you can go check that out. But it was like so miraculous that she also had a silver original SP at the exact same time. It was so cool.
All right, and that is not the only thing that Brendon has done. Brendon, can you talk about the packages, plural, that you've received?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Sure. I love that. Was very accusatory in a way that I appreciated. What have you done, Bigley? This is more John than anything else. John just messaged me one day and said, "Hey, Lenovo is interested in sending you a Legion Go. Are you interested in receiving one?" And I said yes, not expecting a Legion Go to actually show up. Like literally a couple days after that.
They were quick, weren't they? They were very quick.
They were very quick. Yeah, shout out to Lenovo. Thank you for sending it. I'll say this, a little peek behind the curtain for people who don't do podcasts like this or make content like this on the internet. I've never received a review unit of a device like this before. So it shows up. There's a couple boxes in there. It comes with this big collection of forms that are like people to reach out to in case anything goes wrong, which is I thought was interesting, but also the details of like, here's how to return it and when to return it, because you don't get to keep these devices. So I have it for 30 days. I have 30 days of the Legion Go. It also came with the Lenovo Legion glasses,
Yes.
which are the kind of AR-esque glasses that you can plug into the USB-C port of the Legion Go. And essentially it acts as a monitor for the Legion Go, so you can play at night. It kind of creates, like, hypothetically, a much larger screen in front of your face. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I think on the high level, the reason I was so interested in the Legion Go and the ROG Ally is I own a Steam Deck. I got the Steam Deck at launch. I got it specifically because I didn't really have a way to play PC games. It was like the thing that we were missing on Into the Aether specifically. We had all three consoles, but not a PC, so there were some games that every once in a while would come out and we'd be like, man, it would be really nice to include this in our Game of the Year discussions, but we just can't. And the Steam Deck felt like an obvious pickup for that reason. But over the course of time, what I've kind of learned about the Steam Deck, and myself at least, is that I'm less comfortable using it because of the Proton compatibility layer, which, to make a long story short, is just the way that Steam has developed the ability to play Windows games or like .exe files on a Linux-based console. And it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. And that means that there are some games that just don't run. And the idea of a bunch of companies like ASUS and like Lenovo starting to build Windows-based versions of the Steam Deck meant to me greater compatibility, and that was kind of interesting to me. Also, I'm just more comfortable using Windows than I am anything else, outside of Mac OS, obviously. But I wanted to pick one of these things up. So Lenovo sent me a Legion Go, and I'll say this on the high end. I think it's a great device. I like it a lot. It is gigantic.
It is.
But it has proven to me, that I do want a Windows handheld. It has proven to me that, like, instead of building a Windows PC for myself, I think I would rather have something like this. I do think the Legion Go is too big for me. I find that when I'm holding it, I need to either be like sitting cross-legged on a couch and have it like resting in my lap, or I need to be like using the back of my couch to kind of prop it up.
Yeah.
So I'm holding it, and it's like a lot of the weight is distributed not in just my hands. But the experience of playing these games on this device is, I don't want to be too disparaging of the Steam Deck because I think it's an amazing device, but like the Legion Go just kind of blows it out of the water in a lot of respects. Just like visually, in terms of like the settings that I need to set up. I mean, the opening up Elden Ring, for example, you know, preparing for the DLC that's coming out, at least at the time of this recording, in a couple days. Elden Ring required no finagling whatsoever when I opened it up. It was running and looked beautiful. It looked just about as good as it did on my Series S, my Xbox Series S, when I had that before I upgraded to the Series X, which I think for a handheld is pretty remarkable. My direct comparison to that is the Steam Deck, where it was running at like mostly low settings and looked fine. But even, you know, a couple days after I received it, Square Enix launched the Kingdom Hearts trilogy, or the whole Kingdom Hearts collection, on Steam. And I just jumped right into the deep end with Kingdom Hearts 3, which is, you know, the most recent Kingdom Hearts game. And just out of the box looked amazing and played great. And I found myself in a space where I think we've all found ourselves, where you go from testing a device to kind of forgetting that you're testing a device and just playing a game for X amount of hours.
Yes.
And I was just playing Kingdom Hearts 3 for like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours before the battery finally started to give out, which I think is, you know, the one thing about running games that are this high end on a device like this is the battery is going to give out pretty quickly. But all that to say, that experience all told of not needing to go to protondb.com and see if the game is going to run at all, and if it's not, are there some like community enabled hacks or tweaks to make the thing run? Removing that entire layer from this experience makes it feel a lot closer to, I think, what a lot of people wanted the Steam Deck to be at launch, which is just this like really kind of console consumer facing way of engaging with PC gaming. You know, for the people who don't want to sit there and mess around with settings all the time and are used to the console experience, being able to pick up a device and just play those games. The Legion Go, and I would assume the ROG Ally and all of these devices that are running Windows, I think get a lot closer to that because of that lack of finagling that the Steam Deck requires, which I think is maybe a hot take, but I'm a person who loves tinkering with stuff. I opened up the SP. I put masking tape under the buttons. Like I've messed around with a bunch of custom firmware on the Linux end. I got EmuDeck running on the Steam Deck like before there was an easy installer. Like I've done all of this stuff, and I find myself to be a person who likes to mess around and, you know, hang out in forums and like look for weird tweaks and community mods and stuff. But the Steam Deck just started to kind of push against me in that way. And the Legion Go kind of just does not. It just, you know, I opened the box up, turned it on. It did spend the whole first night just installing Windows updates over and over and over again for like 2.5 hours. But the next night, dear listener, it was great because I was playing Kingdom Hearts 3 and Destiny 2 and Elden Ring, and it all just ran great out of the box, which I think is pretty remarkable. So I don't know if I'm going to get a Legion Go for myself, but I am curious about the Ally X when people have had their hands on it for a while. And I am curious about the Legion Go Mini, if that's going to be a real device. You know, if they can take what I already love about this thing and make it smaller and fix some of the things about the ergonomics. Federico, you mentioned to me pretty immediately, like, hey, get the hand grips. They have these like kind of curved hand grips you can get online to go around the edges of the Legion Go, because it is, I mean, just look at a picture of it. It's a pretty angular device, and it sure does feel like it when you've been playing it for 2 hours straight. But if they can fix those few things and make it a little bit smaller, but with kind of the same power, at least, I don't need the same battery, but like the same power, I think I would be really compelled, because the screen is beautiful. I like the device a lot, but I do wish it was a little bit more portable, a little more like the Steam Deck in that way.
Yeah, now that I've used a Legion Go for a while, I think there are possibly two main issues that all these Windows devices have, and the areas where I still think the Steam Deck has an advantage. The first one, I think, is something that Microsoft has been working quite publicly to fix, which is give these devices a more user-friendly front end.
Yes.
Because when you boot it up, it's just Windows, like you're staring at your desktop.
So yeah, it's a tiny Windows laptop that you have to somehow manipulate with a tiny trackpad and face buttons and joysticks.
Or your fat fingers.
Or your fat fingers, right.
Tapping stuff on screen. So, and Microsoft has been working on a handheld UI optimizations for the Xbox app, but obviously, like what I think would be really beneficial to have is a full-on front end for Windows for gaming, which maybe that's what Microsoft is doing for their Xbox handheld, which we were hoping to see at the Xbox showcase at the Summer Games Fest, but no, they just said that they are, thinking about handhelds, as we know. But maybe that front end UI is something that Microsoft can fix. And the second issue I wanted to mention, which is probably a more difficult thing to fix because it relates to just how Windows operates and how these devices work in terms of memory management, which is, I mentioned it before, sleep and resume. Windows does have sleep, but it's not Android or iOS or Steam Deck like sleep. Those devices, they save their states to the RAM. I'm simplifying here, but that's how it works. And that's how you can pick it up immediately and return to what you were doing. That's just not how Windows works, and it's not how Windows gaming works. And for that to become a reality, to have a handheld where you can have Nintendo Switch-like or Android-like sleep and resume, that for me is the dream. And it's the reason why, for example, sometimes I think about like missing a Steam Deck. For example, I was playing Dragon Quest XI a few days ago, and I was far away from a save point, and the game doesn't let you save anytime you want. You gotta, confess at a church, talk to a priest or a nun in that game, and I was far away from the priest, and I needed to go out and pick up something and come back home, and I couldn't put the device to sleep. So what I had to do to not lose my progress was I connected my Legion Go to a charger and I left it on and running.
Left it on the whole time.
I just left it on the whole time. And so that is, I think with all these Windows handhelds, what I would like to see a better front end UI and somehow tweak Windows so that it can support sleep and resume.
And I think tweak it for power consumption too, because that
yes.
Obviously is a big thing with these devices, is that it's much better if you have the opportunity to play with them plugged in, or at least for part of the time, because they do wear down the battery pretty quickly.
Yeah. So Brendon, I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, that's good. What about the Legion glasses?
Yeah, I got to hear about these glasses. I've never used them myself, and I don't think you have either, Federico.
Okay.
I do have the X Real Air, but I don't have the Legion glasses. No.
Oh, you do? Okay, so there's a frame of reference here. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about here, there's this kind of like burgeoning product category that has started over the past, like, I would say, year and a half to 2 years. And what they are essentially these glasses that kind of look like bigger, chunkier sunglasses that sit a little bit further away from your face than normal sunglasses would. And they have a big wire coming out of the back, and that wire will connect to any of your devices that use a USB-C port, and have like some kind of display out via USB-C. And X-Real is one of the first companies to like kind of really nail it in a lot of people's eyes, but Lenovo also released their own version called the Legion glasses. And the way this works is there's no like battery power connected to the Legion glasses, which I thought was interesting. You literally just plug it into the Legion Go, and it will just display whatever's on the Legion Go screen in front of your eyes. And I'll be honest, it's like good, not great. I like the idea of them more than I like them, if that makes sense. The thing that really stuck out to me about the Legion glasses is that because it's not battery powered, you can just plug it into anything. And because it's just USB-C, you could just kind of plug it into anything. So like it worked on my iPhone, it worked on my iPad. I plugged it into the Odin 2, and I was playing GameCube on a big screen floating above my head at night while my partner was asleep. The audio is like surprisingly better than you think. There are a bunch of like brightness settings and a kind of like sleep mode that allows it to kind of filter out some of the blue light. So you're getting, kind of a more almost like night shift on the iPhone experience. All in all, like it feels like a device or even a product category that is, I would say, 1 or 2 more years out from being, I don't want to say ubiquitous, but being what everyone expects when they hear about it. The thing that I was feeling more than anything else while lying in bed playing Skies of Arcadia Legends on my Odin 2.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay.
It's a great game. Yeah. The Odin 2 was resting in my lap. I was lying in bed and looking straight up at the ceiling and playing Skies of Arcadia Legends. And I was thinking to myself while this was happening, this is a brief glimpse into everyone's future. And I don't know if you felt this way while you were using the X-Real Air, Federico, but I had this feeling while I was using it that I was like, this is the other end of the spectrum away from, or like closer to the Meta Ray-Ban glasses.
Right.
Yes.
On the spectrum between those and the Vision Pro.
Yes.
Like it is getting closer to this thing that I think we all know is coming. And every company is kind of telegraphing is what they're trying to build. But this idea, I know X-Real, or is it X-Real, or is it, I think it's Viture, Viture.
Viture, they're making that new model, what's it called? The XR Pro? Something like that?
Yeah, I think that is the name. They have an amazing...
Yes.
A lot of X's today. The day of X's. They have an amazing feature where it kind of looks like regular glasses, and then you can press a button and it will black out the lenses, so they kind of become sunglasses. And I was thinking to myself while I was seeing that and using the Legion glasses, I was like, this technology is going to become ubiquitous so fast. It's going to be like AirPods, or it's going to be like the Apple Watch and wearables. Like it's going to be one of those things where, you know, it's going to get announced at an event. Who knows who's going to make like the first versions of these that really work in a way that is appealing to people and is like useful enough to be appealing to people. But, you know, you'll see it in an event. People will dunk on it and say it looks stupid and why would I ever need this? And then 6 months later, everyone in New York City is wearing them on the subway. Like that is the experience I had with the AirPods. That is the experience I had with the Apple Watch. And that is the experience I will have with these eventually. So I was using these Legion glasses and I was like, this is not it for me, but it is proving the idea that it will be it for everyone.
Yeah, John, you also have the X-Real.
I do.
Yeah.
And I haven't used them in a long time since I got the Vision Pro. But, you know, hearing Brendon talk about using it with the Odin, I actually have never done that. And I think I'm going to try it soon because it seems like
it's cool.
A pretty neat accessory for retro gaming. And I love that idea of just kind of like sitting in the dark, lying in bed and playing a game and using those X-Reals as a display.
So this is funny because in preparation for this episode, I actually got my X-Real Air back from storage, and I used them a bunch with my Legion Go to play Dragon Quest 11.
Oh, nice.
On the ceiling, basically. And what I realized, so I bought the X-Real, and last year I talked about them with John. John also got a pair, and then we all got so excited about the Apple Vision Pro, and sort of as a more premium take on that idea, sort of fulfilling that role of like, well, what if you can have a giant display in front of you and it's even better than the fake sunglasses? And so I put the X-Real in storage, and I haven't used them in a while. And then as I was thinking about this last week, I realized, you know, the Apple Vision Pro actually did not fulfill this role that I was anticipating.
If only it had USB out.
Exactly, or I guess video in more than USB out. Yeah, because it doesn't let you physically connect a USB-C cable. And so I was thinking, you know, I could actually take those glasses back from storage, and sure enough, I'm using mine with prescription lenses. You can put it in the X-Real. There's a little slot for prescription lens attachments. And I just connected the USB cable to my Legion Go, and Windows picked it up as an external monitor right away. And so all I had, even, you know, something that the Legion Go lets you do is I detached the controllers, obviously, put the Legion Go on my nightstand, and adjusted just so that the glasses were going to the bottom port and my charger was going to the top USB port.
Yes.
And so I was laying in bed, staring at the ceiling, my hands with the two controllers, like the two split controllers, and just playing Dragon Quest like that on a virtual monitor. And, it does feel like the future. And so I should have, I'm having fun with the X-Real again, but I am very intrigued by those Viture XR
Yeah, they
Pro.
do look interesting.
Yeah.
They do. What are they called, John? Photochromatic lenses or something?
I think that's
like when
what
you
it
press.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
when
they
turn
make conference
dark.
rooms with those, right? Where you can have clear glass and you press a button and then it shades it all out. But yeah, they're just doing that on a small lens.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think
The reviews have been glowing for those things in particular, also because they're also one of the first that I've seen that allow you to wear your like regular prescription glasses while wearing them and have it still work as well, which I think is a huge issue with a lot of the earlier
the
versions
X-Reals are very fiddly with the prescription lenses. I have to watch a YouTube video every time
Oh my God, every single time, yes.
Because if you take the way they work, the way you insert them is just not obvious at all. And you really do need to have, there's like 2 or 3 little tiny parts that you have to kind of jam into one spot and clip in. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And also Viture, with this new model, they created, they were using a proprietary connector before to connect their glasses to other devices, but now they have made a proprietary connector to USB-C adapter, and I think a lot of people like that. And also, instead of, I have been following this scene, as you may expect. X-Real just came out with, I don't know if you've seen this, Brendon. I think, John, you've seen this. X-Real just announced the X-Real Beam Pro,
right?
Which is
the phone.
It's a phone that lets you capture spatial photos and videos with 2 lenses on the back that are like more distant from each other than, say, the lenses on an iPhone.
Right.
And also, it's an Android phone, so it's got Netflix and a bunch of other apps, and you can install any Android game you want and play it on, using the glasses as an output device. And it's also a phone that has 2 USB-C ports, one for charging, one for video out. And so that's the approach that X-Real has taken. Viture, instead, when you want to use apps on the glasses, you can connect it to a phone, and they make adapters for phones, or you can get a neckband that is that
is a phone.
It's a computer that you put around your neck.
It's not. Yeah,
it's a neck computer.
It's a neck computer that handles the additional processing for like depth of field and apps, and it's a pretty.
It has the Play Store on it.
It has the Play Store on your neck. So we'll talk about glasses again. Before we wrap up, I wanted to quickly mention, as I hinted at a few minutes ago, the Powkiddy RGB30.
Okay.
This is the latest handheld in my collection. Been keeping an eye for a while, and I sat on it for a few weeks, and then I just pulled the trigger couple of weeks ago, and I was like, okay, I just want to get this thing. As I mentioned, I was looking for a square aspect ratio display to play Super Nintendo games and Game Boy games, instead of having them be pillar, or what is it, pillar box or letter box? I guess pillar box, when you have the black bars like on the
left and right.
On the left and right.
Yeah.
Yes. I wanted to just have a square display. And guys, I'm in love with this thing, I gotta say. So I've been playing Chrono Trigger, which turns out I do not remember Chrono Trigger at all, which makes sense. I played and finished the game 20 years ago at this point on an emulator on the PSP. I have completely removed any memory of the Chrono Trigger story from my brain, it seems. So I recently have gone through the process of digitizing all of my Super Nintendo cartridges using a device called the open source cartridge reader. That is, so this thing was like, the spec for it was published on GitHub, and it's open source, but there is a building service in Japan from a company called Save the Hero that have created their own take on the open source cartridge reader, and it looks amazing. I think, John, you also have this.
I do. I got yellow with black screws in it, so it
Nice.
looks like a bumblebee. I love it.
Nice. I have the transparent acrylic version. So this is
so envious. It's
yeah.
so pretty.
So this thing has a teeny tiny OLED display and a bunch of cartridge slots to rip your own Game Boy, NES, SNES, Sega Genesis,
N64.
Nintendo 64. Like you can basically any cartridge you can think of, you can plug it in and rip the game to an SD card, and you can use the tiny display and the buttons to navigate the menus. So I've been ripping my own games, and that's how I've been playing my own copy of Chrono Trigger. And the RGB30, first of all, I want to mention I really love the hardware, and the form factor is everything I was hoping it would be. I instantly modded the console with the Sakura Retro Mod buttons that I got from Etsy. So I
Nice.
went with a white console and the colored face buttons.
Yeah,
It's
that
got
looks good.
SNES style buttons. The display is a square, and it's very unusual, but it totally works fine, especially if you follow Russ's guide, Retro Game Corps, for setting up the 8:7 aspect ratio for Super Nintendo with overscan. I think it looks really nice. The first run experience with the RGB30, at least for me, was so much better and less confusing than the Anbernic's
Really?
stock software. Yes. So the RGB30 is using GelOS, which I think
Oh, yeah.
it stands for Just Enough Linux operating system. It's basically a light fork. It's a lighter version of Linux that strips down a lot of the additional Linux stuff and still gives you like pre-installed emulators, Wi-Fi, and yeah, it's a very stripped down UI, which I don't know, it really worked well for me. Like how you can access system settings and quickly disable platforms that you're not interested in.
Right.
How you can sort, for example, your ROMs by most frequently used, or you can create favorites. Like I think the UI really works for me in a way that the Anbernic software, at least the stock software, doesn't. I was kind of shocked and surprised, but then I thought about it for like 10 seconds and I realized, oh boy, maybe I shouldn't be surprised. This device also comes with thousands of illegal copies of
They all
video
do.
games on
Yeah.
the SD card, and I guess it's just a standard with these companies now.
It's a standard specifically with this price point, I'll say. Like
Yes.
once you get into the Ayn Odin level, for example, that is not the case anymore. Those devices do not come with a stock SD card filled with stuff.
So yeah, but like I mentioned, I wanted to play Chrono Trigger and Super Nintendo, so I disabled all the platforms I didn't care about. I dragged in from my iPad to the SD card using an adapter the file that I had. I configured RetroArch to use 8:7 aspect ratio instead of 4:3, and I enabled overscan. I enabled the what's it called, the upscaling filter. Oh boy, we'll link Retro Game Corp's guide in the show notes so you can follow it. I enabled the upscaling, and it worked right away, and it was beautiful. There's no menu button on this console. Instead, to access your RetroArch settings, you need to press select an X while in a game, which is, initially was, for example, when you do that in Chrono Trigger, even if you press select and X together, you're always going to open the map, because select opens the map in Chrono Trigger. And that's a minor inconvenience, but I just wanted to mention it. And this, obviously, the RetroArch menu is where you can access your save states and all your other
Just out of curiosity, do the sticks click in? Like, do you have L3 and R3?
Yes, they click in.
So what you can do is go into RetroArch and change that hotkey from select to like L3, for example.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Yes, I should. I haven't spent any time remapping buttons at all, so I should do that.
I did that specifically for my playthrough of Chrono Trigger as well.
Nice. Yeah, I should do that.
How are the triggers and the shoulder buttons, Federico?
So this is the part that I don't like about the RGB30, and the reason why I'm kind of excited about the Cube now. These are inline shoulder buttons.
Right.
They are not triggers. They are very clicky. Let me see if I can pick it up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're inline small shoulder buttons, which they're serviceable, I think. And, arguably a lot of these older games, I mean, if you're playing Game Boy games, they don't have any shoulder buttons at all. But depending on how you wrap your hands around the console, you may accidentally press one. And this is one of the things that I'm looking forward to with the RG Cube. Also, it does have HDMI out, but it's using I think it's HDMI Mini. It's not the full size HDMI. It's not HDMI Micro. It's one of those weird HDMI flavors that requires a special cable.
That's weirdly common with these devices. I will say even the RG28XX as a micro console also has micro HDMI
That's
out,
crazy.
which I'm like, why would I ever use that?
That's terrible. But the final thing I will say is that despite these hardware limitations, and for example, this device is completely flat on its back. It's totally flush, and after you play for an hour, personally, I was feeling it. I thought, boy, I could use a more rounded design. And then I opened Etsy and I saw that there's people obviously making comfort grips for the RGB30. And then I thought maybe I should get one. But then I thought, but the Cube is on its way. Maybe let me just wait and compare the standard version of the RGB30 to how the Cube feels. And so we'll see. But despite all this, with this display, there's something magical to playing Super Nintendo games in the original, almost like how they used to look on a television back in the day. I got lost in that actually almost 2 hours of Chrono Trigger that I was playing. I don't know, there's something about the idea of you're just looking at the game with nothing else around it, and it's a pixel perfect reproduction of the game as you remember it.
Right.
And it's there was something magical to it, and it's a very niche device. I would absolutely not recommend it for something like a PSP, for example, that has a completely different aspect ratio. But I think, and this is not even the device for GameCube emulation, arguably. The RG Cube is probably better for that, given the performance considerations. But for Super Nintendo and Game Boy, I think this little thing that you can get for $80 is a dream.
Yeah, that to me is the thing that really sells this device, because that's a sweet spot for the games I like to play are those generations. So I don't know. It's very cool. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about the Cube after playing with this one.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, that price point is increasingly competitive, right? Because that's just about what the SP costs as well. And I'll say for the 28XX, I got it on sale from Anbernic's website. They had a sale for a couple of days, so I got it for $40, which, considering it's just about as performant, is a steal, definitely. But yeah, I'm interested to see how powerful devices in this price point are going to get over the next year in particular. Because the RGB30 is definitely a well-loved device, but I do feel like it's kind of time for the next step up. And I think you're right that the Cube is probably it.
All right, boys, I think we did it. I think that's the episode.
Another drop in the bucket. We did it.
Yes, we did. Number 3 in the can. All right, everybody, you can find all three of us online. Federico and I are over at macstories.net, and you can find Brendon at wavelengths.online, and we are on all sorts of social media. I'm at John Voorhees everywhere. Federico is at Fetici everywhere. And Brendon is at Brendon Bigley everywhere as well. Talk to you later, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.